Hi, Year Nines. Yesterday today actually, I got loads of emails from you saying, oh, we tried to do the work and we didn't understand it. And we tried to do the work, but the links weren't working and sound wasn't working on the PowerPoint and blah, blah, blah. And it was all a bit frustrating. So, what I am doing, as you can see, is making you a little video to talk through today's work on YouTube, because I always find that whenever I put anything on YouTube, it works. Whenever I try and use like the school systems, it doesn't work. So I don't think they're any surprise to you about that. So the first thing that I wanted to go through today was one thing that was confusing a couple of you yesterday. So I asked you to watch a video clip, which is probably about 10 minutes long. And a couple of you were like, we didn't know what was going on because we couldn't tell who's who. So I put some pictures up on the next two slides so you can see who's who. Right, when I'm teaching Romeo and Juliet, there's two different film versions that I use, and I love both of them, but for different reasons. So there's one film version which is created by a film director called Franco Zeffirelli, and he made this film back in the 1970s, and he actually filmed it on location in Italy in traditional costume of what the characters, the actual people who are in the play, would have worn in Renaissance times in Italy. And then there's a more recent version, which was made in the mid 1990s by another famous film director called Baz Luhrmann. And he set his in modern day settings. It's still a bit vintage to you guys, but it's this kind of 1990s style that he uses. If you know the song Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, it's that kind of vibe that's going on. So you've got the guys dressed in kind of skater, surfer costumes. And what you can see on this slide is I've shown you some of the characters. So this one is Benvolio. And remember, before we went onto a kind of mini school lockdown, we said that Benvolio is Romeo's kind of best friend and cousin, he calls him. So I know in urban slang nowadays, we still call someone cousin if they are a really, really close friend. So in the 1970s traditional film, this rather gorgeous looking fellow here is Benvolio. And in the Baz Luhrmann, the 90s version, this is Benvolio here, not quite so handsome. Okay, and then we've got Tybalt. Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. So you can see that he's a bit older. Tybalt is a troublemaker. So he's always causing trouble. He's always looking for a fight. Tybalt is kind of like the second in command in the Capulet family. Juliet's name's Capulet, and they're always fighting with the Montagues, Romeo's family. So you can see there's Tybalt from the Zeffirelli version, and there's Tybalt from the Baz Luhrmann, the 1990s version. And if you watch that bit of the film, I think, which I set you to watch last time, they've kind of got quite a lot of religious imagery. So whereas these Montagues, kind of like the surfer dude vibe going on, these guys, they've got lots and lots of Catholic imagery going on. It's kind of like tattoos of Jesus and that kind of thing, Cuban heels and pointy boots. So that's how you can tell these guys apart in that 1990s version. And then we still haven't met her in the play yet, but this is Juliet from the traditional version, the 1970 version, set in traditional costume. And she's gorgeous, isn't she? She was about the same age as the real Juliet. So believe it or not, the real Juliet in the play, we find out she's 13 going on 14, so she's not even 14 yet. And the work that we're going to be looking at later today, you find that quite shocking when you think about what they want to happen to Juliet. And Olivia Hussey, who played Juliet, she was like 15 going on 16 when she actually filmed this. They wanted to keep their ages really close to what it says in the play. And then we've got Claire Danes, who's a really famous actress in Hollywood, and she plays Juliet in the Baz Luhrmann 1990s version. Okay, so that's those guys. Right, so here are some more of the characters who we're going to meet today. So here's Romeo from the 1970s version. And oh, my heart, swoon, it's Leonardo DiCaprio who plays Romeo in the Baz Luhrmann version, looking rather lovely with his floppy hair there. Juliet has got a nurse, so it's kind of like an old-fashioned way of saying like a nanny, someone who's always looked after her like a childminder kind of thing. So you can see how young she is, the fact that she's still got a nurse. And this is the nurse from the traditional version, and this is the nurse from the 1990s Baz Luhrmann version, just there. And then finally, this is a weird one. She's a bit of a bitter old fruit, sour old lemon, Lady Capulet, Juliet's mum. And that's her in the Baz Luhrmann. No, it's not. That's her in the Franco Zeffirelli version, the 1990s version. And this one here is her in the Baz Luhrmann one. And you can probably make out she looks really, really weird in this one, because when she's talking to Juliet, she is getting herself all ready for a costume party that they are going to hold. And that's why she's got this kind of like bald cap on, because she's got a Cleopatra wig that's going over that. But she looks really weird in her underwear and her bald cap just there. Okay, so those are the characters. Hopefully that will help you to understand it when you're watching one of the two different film versions. You can see who is who. Right, what I'm going to go through now on the video is like the slideshow for today's lesson. And I'm going to explain it as I go. So what you can do if you want is just kind of keep the video running, and when you've got some writing to do, you can just pause it and do your writing, and I'll try and remember to tell you to pause it. So don't try and watch it all the way through, because you won't remember anything. Like, pause it, do your work, play the next bit, do your work, and so on. Okay. Okay, so this is kind of what we ended up finishing with yesterday, if you managed to do the work. Towards the end of Act 1, Scene 1, Romeo's father and Benvolio talk about how Romeo is shutting himself away, he's locking himself in his room. Benvolio thinks he'd better go and find Romeo and find out what is wrong with him. And these are some of the things that the boys say when they're talking to each other. Romeo says, "Out of her favour, where I am in love." So he's talking about a girl, but he hasn't even met Juliet yet. So he's not talking about Juliet. Benvolio says, "Be ruled by me. Forget to think of her." So Benvolio says, "Oh, she's just a girl. Forget about it. Don't get stressed." And Romeo says to Benvolio, "Oh, teach me how I should forget to think." And Romeo's like, "Well, tell me how to change my emotions then. Okay, go on. You tell me how to do it and I'll do it." Because you can't change your emotions. You can't stop the things that are troubling your mind, can you? All right. So what you can do now, because I've explained those three, is have a go at answering these questions. How does he feel? Why do you think that? These two I haven't explained. I've only explained those quotes. So how is Romeo different to other members of his family? What have they all been doing like 10 minutes ago? Why? And why does Shakespeare introduce Romeo to us after having shown the battle between Capulet and Montague? So why are they showing us Romeo now? Why didn't they show him first? Okay, so have a think about the structure of the play, why it's structured in that order. Pause the video, write down your answers, don't forget full sentences, and then when you've answered those questions, you can press play again. Okay, so today what we're hoping to learn is hopefully you'll be able to explain how they're introduced to the audience. Hopefully you'll be able to explain how Romeo uses language when describing Juliet. And you might be able to evaluate the problems that Romeo and Juliet will face in order for them to be together. Okay, so hopefully you're beginning to think about that already after answering the third question on the previous page. Okay, so this is where the story goes next, and that's a picture of Juliet, which isn't really helpful, but it was just on the slide. So you remember what Juliet looked like in the film. She looks like that, or she looks like that. Not like that, but that's on painting. Okay, this is what Benvolio says. Romeo, I know what will help you get over your love for this random woman, Rosaline. We find out she's called. come to a party with me. This is what he says. At this same ancient feast of Capulet sups the fair Rosaline, whom thou so lovest, with all the admired beauties of Verona. Go thither, and with unattained eye compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow. Okay, so it says think, pair, share. So I'll share with you. How does Benvolio persuade Romeo to go to the party? Rosaline is the girl that Romeo is currently in love with. So Benvolio is trying to get him to go to Capulet's party. Think about the extension task. Could that be a good idea, to go to their enemy's party without an invitation? Maybe. He says that Rosaline's going to this party, so that's going to persuade Romeo to go for a start, isn't it? So the girl that he really fancies is there. However, Benvolio goes to say she's going to be there with all the admired beauties of Verona. So he's saying every beautiful girl in our city of Verona is going to be at Capulet's party. So it's going to be Rosaline there, but all these other gorgeous girls as well. And Benvolio says, go thither. So go to the party, go there. And with untainted eyes. So don't just look at Rosaline, look at everybody and try and be fair to everybody who's there. Compare her face with some that I shall show. So I'm going to point out some really pretty girls to you. And he says that he's going to make Romeo believe that Rosaline is a crow. So he's comparing a swan to a crow. So if you think a swan is a white, elegant bird, with kind of a long, elegant neck and white feathers, whereas a crow is a kind of big, clumpy, kind of ugly, dark bird with big flappy wings and a black beak and a really horrible noise it makes. So he's trying to say, by the time I show you all these gorgeous girls at the party, you're not going to fancy Rosaline anymore. You're going to think she looks like a crow. All right. So pause the video and write in your own words, how does Benvolio persuade Romeo to go to the party? So he's using a few different techniques there, isn't he? Pause the video. Off you go. Okay, so we're kind of dashing through the play at the moment, and we're going to meet another new character, and he's called Count Paris. And there he is in the old-fashioned film with this weird hat. His hats get weirder as the film goes on. And here is Paris, and you may know Baz Luhrmann's modern-day Paris as Ant-Man, because that's what he does these days. So, yeah, Paris in Baz Luhrmann's 1990s film is played by the actor who plays Ant-Man. So from being a young, good-looking man, he's playing a stressed-out middle-aged father now, I believe. So this is pretty horrible. Count Paris, he's wealthy, he's rich, he's related to the prince who broke up the fight earlier, and he's also related to Mercutio as well. If you remember, Mercutio is one of Romeo's friends. He hasn't really been in it that much yet, but we'll meet him a lot later. So he is like cousins with the prince, and he's cousins with Mercutio. He wants to get married to Juliet, who I just told you is 13. Just know that things were really different in Shakespeare's day. Like, people died when they were in their 30s. That was a good life. Okay. So yeah, I guess it's not right. It wasn't even right in Shakespeare's day, honestly, but it was legal, but it's still, yeah, horrible. He wants to marry Juliet. It says here marriage was more a business transaction than about love. Okay, so if Juliet gets married to him, he'll get Juliet's money. The Capulet family will have loads more power because they've got some good connections. They'll be kind of related to the prince and the royalty. So you know, that's good for, not good for Juliet, but it's good for Lord Capulet. Lord Capulet, however, is quite nice about the whole thing. He says, woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. My will to her consent is but a part. So he's saying, we're not just going to make this business transaction. I want you to go and talk nicely to her. I want you to make Juliet love you, win her heart over so she actually wants to get married to you. And Lord Capulet goes on to say, and she agreed, within the scope of choice lies my consent. So if Juliet does like you and she says, yeah, all right, I'll marry him, then I'll give consent and you can get married. So Lord Capulet's being quite nice at the moment, because it would be pressure for him there. Okay, so that's what's going on there, and that leads us into the next scene. So we're going to meet Juliet now, and we're going to look at some Shakespeare, and then we're going to come back and answer these questions. So as we're going through it, what reasons does Lady Capulet give as to why Juliet should marry Paris? Where she's been quite persuasive. How does the nurse try to persuade Juliet to agree to marry Paris? And how does Juliet react to her mother's words? What does that show about her personality? And when you come back to answer these questions, there's some useful words to help you answer the green question up here. Okay, so let's have a look at the text. Lady Capulet says, tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? And Juliet says, it's an honour that I dream not of. So Lady Capulet says, do you fancy getting married then? And Juliet says, no, not really. But she's been quite careful that the way that she words it. It's an honour. So she said, yeah, it's an honour to be married, but it's certainly not something that has been in my mind. Okay. The nurse, however, says, an honour. Were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou hadst sucked wisdom from thy teat. So the nurse is like, yes, of course it's an honour to get married. And you should get married, Juliet. What's going on with you, girl? You should be jumping at this chance. Lady Capulet, Juliet's mum, says, well, think of marriage now. This is going to disturb you, especially girls. Younger than you here in Verona, ladies of esteem are already mothers. So remember, Juliet's not even 14 yet. And Lady Capulet saying, well, you need to think about getting married, Juliet, love, because in this city of Verona, some very, very posh ladies are already mothers. So not only have they got married, they got themselves pregnant as well. Now, that suggests to me that some of these other posh ladies like Juliet got married when they were 12 and were pregnant by the time they were 13. So that's pretty horrible. It tells you about the days. You can imagine if this was going on regularly, why mums would die in childbirth. Already made mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years that you are now a maid. So she's having a go at Juliet for still being unmarried and unexperienced. A maid means a virgin. So she's saying, by the time I was your age, Juliet, just short of 14, I was already married and pregnant. Now, it does say a lot, though, because we find out a bit later that Juliet was the Capulet's only child. So, yeah, Lady Capulet, obviously must have been quite damaged by having Juliet at such a young age. So, yeah, that's what Lady Capulet said. When I was 13, nearly 14, I was already pregnant with you. And then Lady Capulet goes on to say, the valiant Paris seeks you for his love. Oh, the nurse is so impressed by this. A man, young lady. Lady, such a man as all the world. He's a man of wax. So you can see the nurse is like, oh my God, he is an amazing guy. He is so handsome that he looks like a waxwork. Now, that sounds a bit weird nowadays, doesn't he? He looks like he comes out of Madame Tussauds or something. But in Shakespeare's day, like if you're a man of wax, it means that you're like so good looking, so perfect, like as if a sculptor has kind of sculpted you out of wax. So you can see that the nurse is really layering it on for Juliet. Lady Capulet says, Verona's summer hath not such a flower. So Lady Capulet is building on what the nurse has said. Yeah, he's so handsome that he's like the most beautiful flower in Verona. So that's what Lady Capulet says. So they're really laying it on thick to Juliet, aren't they? Nay, he's a flower in faith, a very flower. So although the nurse is saying no, she's actually agreeing with what Lady Capulet says. So Lady Capulet goes on to say, what say you? Can you love this gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read all the volume of young Paris's face and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament and see how one another lends content, and what obscured in this fair volume lies. Find written in the margent of his eyes. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. The fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride, for fair without the fair within to hide. That book in many's eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locks in the golden story. So shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less. So what Lady Capulet is saying is quite a few things here, but mostly what she's saying is look at his face, look at his gorgeous face, and see how handsome he is. She says it's almost as if delight has been written there with beauty's pen. So it's as if they've written a description of a really handsome man, and this is what you get. They talk about how his face is like a book, and to read all the kindness and the gentleness and the handsomeness in his book, and all he lacks is a cover. So Juliet would kind of go and be the cover to his book. So if you think about books, they normally have very beautiful covers. So that's all he needs to make him complete. Beauty of Juliet to be the cover to his book. And then she reminds him at the end, you're going to share everything that he possesses. And he's a prince's cousin, so he is quite wealthy. So if you marry him, you're going to be wealthy too. And she says, by having him, you make yourself no less. And she's saying, if you get married to Paris, you're going to be really rich, really famous in our city of Verona. Okay, so that's what Lady Capulet says. Quite persuasive, isn't it? Okay, and then the nurse is always being quite saucy, and she says, no less, nay, bigger, women grow by men. And what the nurse is not talking about the money that Juliet's going to have. She's saying, yeah, if you get married to Paris, you will soon find yourself pregnant, so like growing a baby. So the nurse always has to be quite saucy in the comments that she makes. She's quite sexual, the nurse. And then Lady Capulet says, speak briefly, can you like of Paris's love? Juliet is really cautious, the way that she replies again. I'll look to like. So she's saying, oh, well, I'll look at him and I'll try and like him. Like I'll go in and look at him and think, yeah, hopefully I'll fancy him. She says, if looking like him move, but no more deep will I endart mine eye than your consent gives strength to make it fly. So she's saying, like, you have told me that I've got to like him, so yeah, I'm going to try and like him because you've told me to, basically. So she's not really committing herself. She's kind of saying, yeah, I'm going to like him because you told me that I'm going to like him. But she is being cautious. She's not saying, oh, I'm not just going to fall madly in love with him just because you told me to. Okay, so that's what that means. So let's go back to those questions now that we've been through that. So see how much you can remember. What reasons does Lady Capulet give why she should marry Paris? So a couple of good ones there, weren't there? How does the nurse try and persuade Juliet to agree to marry Paris? Not so effective. And how does Juliet react to her mother's words, both at the beginning and at the end of that section? And what does it suggest about her personality? And you could probably try and pick out some of these words to do that. So pause the video and answer those 3 questions. Okay, this is meant to be in this lesson, but I think that you guys have probably done at least 40 minutes work by now if you've been stopping this video properly and filling out all the answers. So I'm not going to do the next bit now. We will save the next bit for next week. So hopefully you found it easier following along with the video and pausing it and listening to what I said, and hopefully that makes a little bit more sense for you. What I'm going to do now is try to find a video clip of the nurse and Juliet's mum, Lady Capulet, talking to Juliet, so you can watch that as well. And what I'll do is I'll drop the link to that, if I can find it, down into the description underneath, but I'll also, if I can find a link, put it in a little info, so that will pop up when you need to watch it in the info. Okay. If you have any problems playing this video, send me an email like you did today to tell me that you've got problems. All right. But apart from that, hopefully I'll see you back in school next week. But if not, I'll do another video for you for your lesson on Tuesday next week. Bye for now.